So let's take a look at language then, in terms of what does language do? And notice I've got in parentheses symbols up there. So there's a couple of different ways in which we look at language, and this will come up later, but just to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. There's a couple of different ways we can look at language. Can use. Okay. So there's two ways that we can look at language. One is we can look at it as a set of products. So I hold up the picture, I tell Mabel it's picture, and then I give it in a sentence. This is a picture, present active copula to be is, and then Mabel gives it back to me. This is a picture. And those are products of the learning system. So if they're products of the learning system, what does that mean? It means they're on the outside here. They're not on the inside. Where's the thinking? It's not there. So anytime that you're going after a set of patterns or products, and you're asking a person to produce something on the outside, okay, that's based upon what you've put in, then you're not getting thinking. All right? So how many of you are either ESL or speech path? That's what I thought, okay? Those of us who have those ESL, they call them in Oregon ESOL endorsements, okay? Those of us who have those of us who are speech pathologists, they forgot to tell us the other half of the story here. Okay? And the other half of the story is that language is also a function that's based upon how we think. All right? So you can look at it, products, and that's your word order, your syntax, your grammar, your morphology, your vocabulary, your, what do I want to say, parts of speech, okay, your nouns, your verbs, that kind of thing. Or we can look at language in terms of its processes. Okay? Products are your structures, and processes are your functions. So what are you using language for? Well, I went to school today, and the teacher was talking about trees, and I made up a song while the teacher was talking about trees, and I'm going to come home and I'm going to sing my song to somebody else. Okay, so what that child has done is they've taken the information, they put the information into a form that they're going to convey that shows their thinking about what they did during the day. It's novel, it's different, it's new, it comes from their system, it's not a regurgitation and imitation of somebody else. That's what functions are all about. How do you use language to get what you need done? Okay, and the fields that fit there, most of us are familiar up here with our syntax and morphology, that type of thing. But the fields down here are semiotics or semiosis. Semiosis is the value of your language. Why are you using language? What do you want to communicate? That you're hungry? That you need something? You want something? You're done with something? You're finished? You know, that you want to make a statement? You know, that you want to share something, you have something that they don't know about that you did at school that you'd like to share with somebody else. What's the purpose? Those are all called different kinds of speech acts. There's all kinds of theory about it. It goes way, way back. But semiosis is the value of language. It's the purpose of language. Okay? So all programs that you do out there in speech pathology, all programs you do as ESL, all programs in the classroom, where you're using any kind of speaking, reading, writing, thinking, viewing, listening, calculating. Those are all letter C pieces that are mediated by language. They all should have semiosis. Because semiosis, you know, semiotics, semiosis is the value part. They're all related to the way in which the brain actually learns language. They're all related to the reason why we have language to begin with, is the way we actually conceptualize ideas, okay? So this is one. Another one here, another field of study is semantics. And semantics has to do with meaning, yes. Vocabulary has very little meaning. Vocabulary are words that belong to somebody else that they want you to memorize and give back definitions for. So they end up being structures, they end up being products. Okay, as opposed to being tags of my thinking. And in the literature, when I use an idea, notice I didn't say word, when I use an idea and I say, oh, can I have some of your vitamin water? When I tag that, vitamin water, okay, it is a tag that I have within my lexicon. Okay? It doesn't belong to anybody else. So I might actually change that, and I say, oh yeah, I want some of that zero squeeze stuff. Okay, and she's going to say, she puzzled look on her face, and she thinks about it a minute, and I'm pointing to it, and she goes, oh, I understand you. You used a tag that I'm not familiar with. You used a way to mark that idea that doesn't match with what the bottle says and what I would call it. Okay, but that's because that's my lexical tag. That belongs to me. That's my creativity. That's what I know. Okay, so the idea here is that semantics has to do with acquiring meaning. And it doesn't really matter what literature you look at, to be perfectly honest. If you get into the research, the science of language, and look at words, guess what we process the fastest in our brains? Anything that's meaningful to us. It processes faster than anything that's structural. You can simplify structure, and it will take more time to process, okay, than something that's more meaningful. So if I say something like, the boy carried the elephant, that'll take a long time to process versus the elephant carried the boy. Okay? I basically used the exact same structure. One had underlying deep meaning, which makes sense. The other one didn't make sense. And so when you ask the person to do something with it, the one that's meaningful always gets processed faster. So if you're trying to help your kids understand the world around them so that they can learn to think at a higher level and function better, you want to bring down the semantics. You want to lower that semantics for them, meaning that you want to add more information. It's the opposite of what many of us are taught. We're taught, simplify what you say, simplify what you say, simplify your pictures, simplify your inputs. And when we do that, we lose the semantics, and that makes it harder for them. We want to increase the meaning so that they can do the task easier. Does that make sense with everybody? Okay. And there's one more here, and this is pragmatics. And pragmatics has to do with the way I'm going to communicate between two or more people, my message. It's the rules of the culture that allows me to communicate, okay? So this pragmatics has to do with being with other people in a communication act. It's kind of why we communicate usually anyway. There's this principle in language. It's called efficiency or redundancy, and we'll put it here under semantics. And we'll call it efficiency, because that's the term that's used most right now in linguistics. And efficiency means that I get to the point and tell you what I need to tell you, okay? And you understand it, and we communicate, and we go about our business, okay? There's this idea from a Western psych model that if I reduce the structures on the surface, if I reduce those products and the structures, it makes communication more efficient. Okay. So these are our processes in language. These are our products in language. And what's interesting is that, we're going to talk about this in a second, but language, okay, is a set of conventions or symbols, okay, but their products are not symbolized. Why? In order for products to be symbolized, they must have these underlying processes to them. So when we talk about, and that's why I went through this to get to this slide up here, is that when we talk about language being a set of symbols, it is only a set of symbols when it represents the semiosis, semantics, and pragmatics. It does not represent symbols when it's a set of structures. Because the person who's symbolizing is the person who gave you the structure to imitate. It doesn't represent the same underlying deep thinking concepts for the person who imitates.